Just off the southern coast of Greece, near the small island of Elefanisos, the water looks calm and ordinary. From the surface, there is nothing to suggest that an entire city rests below. Fishing boats pass over it. Swimmers float above it. For thousands of years, waves have moved quietly across a place that once had streets, homes, and open courtyards where people lived daily life. This place is called Pavlopetri, and it is now known as the oldest submerged city ever discovered. The story of Pavlopetri does not begin with a dramatic expedition or a legendary search. It begins in 1967, when British oceanographer Nicholas Fleming was surveying the coastline of Laconia. At the time, underwater archaeology was still a young field. Divers were exploring shipwrecks, but few were seriously searching for entire ancient cities beneath the sea. Fleming noticed unusual stone patterns on the shallow seabed, only a few meters below the surface. These were not scattered ruins or broken walls. They were arranged too neatly, too deliberately. As divers explored further, the shapes became clearer. Long straight lines formed what looked like roads. Rectangular outlines suggested buildings. Larger open areas hinted at courtyards or public spaces. What they were seeing was not a single structure lost to the sea, but a complete urban layout. Streets intersected at right angles. Houses clustered in blocks. There were even what appeared to be tombs on the outskirts of the settlement. This was not random debris. It was a planned city. At first, the discovery received limited attention. Technology at the time made detailed mapping difficult, and the idea of a fully preserved sunken city challenged existing assumptions. Many ancient coastal settlements were known to have been lost to erosion or earthquakes, but they were usually fragmented or deeply buried. Pavlopetri was different. It was shallow, visible, and remarkably intact. Still, without precise dating and detailed surveys, it remained an intriguing but incomplete mystery. Decades later, that began to change. In the early 2000s, advances in underwater archaeology transformed what researchers could do beneath the surface. In 2009, a team led by archaeologist John Henderson from the University of Nottingham returned to Pavlopetri with high-resolution sonar, underwater GPS, and digital mapping tools. What they produced was the first complete three-dimensional map of a submerged ancient city. The results confirmed what Fleming had suspected years earlier. Pavlopetri was not only real, it was extensive. The mapped area covered several city blocks, with clearly defined streets, buildings with multiple rooms, staircases, and courtyards. Some structures were large enough to suggest administrative or communal use, not just private homes. The layout showed intentional planning, a sign of organized social life rather than a loose coastal village. Dating the city relied on pottery fragments found on the seabed. These ceramics placed Pavlopetri in the Bronze Age, with occupation phases stretching from around 3000 BCE to about 1100 BCE. That means the city existed more than 5,000 years ago and remained active for many centuries. It likely overlapped with the Minoan and Mycenaean civilizations, powerful cultures that shaped early Greek history. What makes Pavlopetri especially important among lost underwater cities is not just its age, but its preservation. Because it sank gradually and settled into sandy sediment, many structures were protected from heavy damage. Walls remain clearly visible. Floor plans can still be traced. Unlike ruins on land, which are often rebuilt, reused, or destroyed over time, Pavlopetri was frozen in place by the sea. For underwater archaeology, this is rare. By studying the city's layout, researchers can begin to understand how people lived there. Homes were built close together, suggesting a dense population. Courtyards imply family-centered living and shared domestic space. The street system points to movement, trade, and planning rather than organic sprawl. Pavlopetri also sat in a strategic location, facing important sea routes in the Mediterranean. This was likely a port town connected to regional trade networks. Artifacts found nearby support this idea. Storage jars, household pottery, and tools indicate everyday life rather than ceremonial use. This was a working city. People cooked here, slept here, raised families here. Boats would have arrived and departed regularly. Goods moved in and out. Pavlopetri was part of a living coastal world, not a mythical place built for legend. So how did an entire city end up underwater? The answer does not lie in a single sudden disaster, but in slow and powerful natural forces. The southern Greek coastline sits in an active seismic zone. Earthquakes have shaped the region for thousands of years. At the same time, global sea levels have risen since the end of the last ice age. Over centuries, even small increases in sea level can permanently flood low-lying coastal settlements. Evidence suggests Pavlopetri experienced both. Earthquake activity likely damaged buildings and weakened the ground. Gradual sea level rise then pushed the shoreline inland. At some point, rebuilding no longer made sense. The city was abandoned and the sea quietly took over. There are no signs of panic or sudden destruction. Instead, Pavlopetri seems to have faded beneath the water as life moved elsewhere. Today, the ruins lie just a few meters below the surface, vulnerable to damage from anchors, tourism, and natural erosion. Greek authorities have taken steps to protect the site, recognizing its global importance. It is not just an ancient city. It is a window into submerged civilizations that once lined coastlines all over the world. Pavlopetri forces researchers to ask a larger question. If an entire Bronze Age city can remain hidden in shallow water for millennia, how many others are still undiscovered? Sea levels have risen more than 100 meters since prehistoric times. Vast areas of ancient coastline now lie underwater. Pavlopetri may not be unique. It may simply be one of the first we were able to see clearly. Life in Pavlopetri did not revolve around temples or palaces. What makes this submerged city so valuable to underwater archaeology is how ordinary it was. This was not a ceremonial center built to impress outsiders. It was a place designed for daily routines. When researchers mapped the buildings room by room, a pattern emerged that felt familiar even across thousands of years. Homes were practical. Spaces were used efficiently. The city was built for people who expected to live there for generations. Most houses followed a similar layout. Rectangular rooms clustered around small courtyards, allowing light and air to reach the interior. These open spaces were likely used for cooking, storage, and shared family activities. Some homes had staircases, suggesting second floors made from lighter materials like wood or mud brick, which did not survive underwater. The stone foundations, however, remain in place, quietly outlining the shape of family life. The streets of Pavlopetri were narrow but deliberate. They connected houses to larger open areas and led toward the shoreline. This tells archaeologists that movement mattered. People were walking goods through the city. They were carrying supplies to and from boats. Pavlopetri was not isolated. It was connected to the sea, and the sea connected it to other cultures across the Mediterranean. Ceramic evidence supports this idea. Pottery styles found at the site matched designs used across southern Greece and the Aegean during the Bronze Age. Storage jars suggest trade goods like oil, grain, or wine. Smaller household vessels point to food preparation and storage. These objects were not luxury items. They were tools of everyday survival, the kind found in homes rather than tombs. One of the most revealing features of Pavlopetri is the presence of what appear to be tombs just outside the main residential area. This separation reflects a clear understanding of space and social order. The dead were honored but kept apart from daily life. That kind of planning suggests a stable community with shared customs and long-term settlement, not a temporary coastal camp. What researchers do not find at Pavlopetri is just as important as what they do. There are no signs of fortifications, no defensive walls, no evidence of sudden violence or destruction. This suggests the city was not lost to invasion or war. Instead, it slowly surrendered to environmental change. That quiet ending makes Pavlopetri different from many ancient ruins discovered on land, which often show layers of conflict and rebuilding. As the sea advanced, buildings would have flooded gradually. First, lower rooms became unusable. Saltwater seeped into foundations. Wells turned brackish. Fishing may have continued for a time, but farming inland would have become harder as the shoreline shifted. Eventually, families left. The city emptied. And then, for thousands of years, it was forgotten. What preserved Pavlopetri so well was also what erased it from memory. Once underwater, it was no longer visible from land. Unlike coastal ruins that remain partly exposed, Pavlopetri disappeared completely. Ancient writers did not describe it, or if they did, their records did not survive. By the time history was written down in detail, the city was already part of the sea. Modern technology changed that. High-resolution sonar allowed researchers to see through murky water and map stone structures with precision. Digital modeling made it possible to reconstruct the city's layout without disturbing it. For the first time, archaeologists could walk through an ancient city without stepping on it. Pavlopetri became a case study in how submerged civilizations could be studied without excavation. This approach is now shaping how scientists think about deep-sea mystery research and lost underwater cities worldwide. Pavlopetri proves that large, complex settlements can survive underwater in recognizable form. It suggests that other coastal regions, especially those flooded after the Ice Age, may hide similar sites. From the Mediterranean to Southeast Asia, ancient shorelines now lie beneath modern seas. There is growing evidence to support this idea. Submerged stone structures near India, drowned landscapes in the North Sea, and sunken ports across the eastern Mediterranean all point to a past where human settlement followed coastlines that no longer exist. Pavlopetri stands out because it is complete. Streets, homes, and public spaces remain connected. It feels like a paused moment rather than scattered remains. Yet this also raises difficult questions. How many sites like Pavlopetri have already been damaged or destroyed by anchors, trawling, or construction before anyone realized what they were? How many ancient ocean discoveries have been lost simply because they were invisible? Underwater archaeology is racing against time, especially as human activity in coastal waters increases. Pavlopetri is now protected, but protection does not stop natural erosion. Currents shift sediment. Marine life grows over stone. Slowly details fade. This makes digital records crucial. The city may one day be harder to see in person, but its mapped form will remain. In that sense, Pavlopetri has been rescued twice, once by the sea and once by technology. The mystery of Pavlopetri is not about who built it or whether it existed. Those questions are largely answered. The deeper mystery is what it represents. It is proof that our understanding of ancient history is incomplete. Entire chapters of human settlement may still lie underwater, untouched and unseen. Pavlopetri is not the end of the story. It is a beginning. Pavlopetri has changed the way researchers think about the past, especially when it comes to where ancient people chose to live. For a long time, history was written from what survived on land. Cities found inland felt permanent, while coastlines were treated as fragile edges. Pavlopetri turns that idea around. It shows that coastal cities were not temporary or careless choices. They were carefully planned, long-lasting communities that simply faced risks we understand better today. When sea levels rose after the last ice age, coastlines shifted slowly but steadily. Areas that were once dry land became shallow bays and, eventually, open water. Early humans followed the shore because it offered food, trade, and travel. Fishing, salt collection, and boat transport made coastal life attractive. Pavlopetri fits this pattern perfectly. Its position allowed easy access to the sea while staying close to fertile land inland. It was built where life made sense at the time. This realization has pushed underwater archaeology into a new phase. Instead of searching only for shipwrecks or isolated ruins, researchers now look for entire landscapes beneath the sea. Sonar scans are used to trace ancient riverbeds, former coastlines, and flooded plains. Pavlopetri serves as a reference point, a clear example of what a submerged city looks like when mapped carefully. Its street grid and building clusters help scientists recognize similar patterns elsewhere. One reason Pavlopetri remained hidden for so long is how shallow it is. Ironically, deep water often protects sites better because fewer people disturb them. Shallow water invites anchors, nets, and construction. Many submerged structures may have been damaged or erased before anyone realized they were ancient. Pavlopetri survived partly by chance, sitting in a relatively quiet stretch of sea. That luck cannot be assumed for other locations. The site also highlights the limits of what we know. Archaeologists can map buildings and date pottery, but they cannot easily answer personal questions. We do not know the names of the people who lived here. We do not know what language they spoke or what stories they told their children. We can see how they built but not what they believed. The sea preserves stone, not memory. Still, small clues offer hints. The organization of space suggests cooperation and shared rules. The separation between living areas and tombs points to customs surrounding death. The lack of defensive walls hints at a time when threats were low or handled differently. These details matter because they show a stable society, not one constantly preparing for disaster. Pavlopetri was not a city waiting to fall. It was a city living its normal life. As interest in submerged civilizations grows, Pavlopetri often becomes the starting point in documentaries and research papers. It grounds the conversation. When people hear about unexplained ruins or sunken structures elsewhere, Pavlopetri reminds them that at least some of these places are real, human-built, and well-documented. It helps separate evidence-based discovery from speculation. That does not mean every underwater formation is a lost city. Natural geology can mimic human design. Erosion can create straight lines and sharp angles. Pavlopetri matters because its human origin is supported by multiple lines of evidence: pottery, layout, cultural context, and historical dating. It sets a standard for how claims about lost underwater cities should be evaluated. There is also a modern lesson hidden in its story. Pavlopetri was lost to gradual environmental change, not sudden catastrophe. That makes it easier to relate to. Coastal communities today face similar challenges as sea levels rise. Studying how ancient people responded, moved, or adapted adds depth to conversations about the future. The past is not distant here. It feels close, almost familiar. Protection remains an ongoing challenge. Even with legal safeguards, underwater sites are difficult to monitor. Technology helps, but enforcement is limited. Digital preservation may become the most reliable way to ensure Pavlopetri is not lost again. Detailed maps, virtual reconstructions, and open research allow the city to exist beyond its physical state. In the end, Pavlopetri does not offer dramatic mystery in the traditional sense. There are no legends of gods or vanished empires tied to it. Its power lies in quiet evidence. It proves that history is incomplete not because it was destroyed but because it slipped beneath the waterline. When we look out at the sea today, we are often looking at former land, former paths, and former homes. Pavlopetri invites a simple but unsettling thought. If one complete city could disappear so completely, then many others may have done the same. They may be waiting just offshore beneath calm water, their streets still aligned, their stories still silent. The search for submerged civilizations is not about chasing myths. It is about accepting that much of human history now lies underwater, and we are only beginning to learn how to listen. As researchers continue to study Pavlopetri, its role in the wider story of human history becomes clearer. This small submerged city is no longer viewed as an isolated case. Instead, it acts like a marker showing where ancient coastlines once existed and how people organized their lives around them. In many ways, Pavlopetri is less about mystery and more about correction. It corrects the assumption that most important ancient settlements were inland. It corrects the idea that the sea only hides shipwrecks, not cities. When scientists reconstruct ancient sea levels, Pavlopetri fits neatly into the timeline. Around 6,000 to 8,000 years ago, the Mediterranean coastline was very different. Large areas that are now underwater were once dry, livable land. Early communities naturally settled near the shore, just as people still do today. Over time, as water slowly advanced, some settlements adapted, while others were abandoned. Pavlopetri appears to be one of those that reached a point where staying no longer made sense. What makes this city especially valuable is how clearly it captures a moment before that final abandonment. There is no evidence of hurried escape. No collapsed walls from a sudden quake. No signs of fire or destruction. The layout feels complete, as if the city was simply left behind. That quiet departure allows archaeologists to study an urban space without the chaos that usually follows disaster. Because of this, Pavlopetri is now used as a training reference for identifying submerged structures elsewhere. When sonar scans reveal rectangular shapes or repeating patterns on the seafloor, Pavlopetri offers a comparison. Are the proportions similar? Do the structures connect in a logical way? Is there evidence of streets or zoning? This careful approach helps avoid false claims while encouraging deeper investigation where patterns truly match human design. It has also influenced how researchers think about prehistoric migration. Coastal routes may have played a far greater role in human movement than land routes alone. Boats allowed people to travel, trade, and communicate long before roads existed. Cities like Pavlopetri would have been nodes in these early networks. Losing them to rising seas means losing key chapters in the story of how cultures connected. Despite its importance, Pavlopetri remains fragile. Even gentle waves move sand across its streets. Marine growth slowly covers stone outlines. Human activity nearby, though often unintentional, adds risk. This has led to growing support for non-invasive study methods. Instead of excavation, which could damage the site, researchers focus on scanning, mapping, and digital preservation. In this way, Pavlopetri becomes a model for how submerged archaeology might be done responsibly in the future. There is also a public side to this story. Virtual reconstructions now allow people to explore Pavlopetri without diving. Streets can be walked again, at least digitally. Homes can be entered. The city becomes understandable not as a ruin but as a place. This helps bridge the gap between academic research and public curiosity, grounding the idea of lost underwater cities in something real and accessible. Pavlopetri's greatest contribution may be how it reshapes expectations. It shows that ancient urban life did not always leave monuments towering above the landscape. Sometimes it left quiet foundations that waited patiently beneath the sea. It reminds us that what we call lost is often just displaced, moved out of sight rather than destroyed. As underwater exploration expands, Pavlopetri stands as a reminder to move carefully. The ocean does not just hide mysteries. It holds history. Each discovery adds detail but also responsibility. Once a site is found, it cannot be unfound. How it is treated next determines whether it remains a source of knowledge or becomes another loss. In the larger picture of ancient ocean discoveries and submerged civilizations, Pavlopetri is not the most dramatic or the most debated. But it may be one of the most honest. It tells a simple story backed by evidence. People lived here. The sea rose. The city sank. And for thousands of years it waited. With Pavlopetri, the mystery is not what happened but how much else like it still exists. The sea covers more than 2/3 of the planet. Along its edges lie the drowned footprints of early humanity. Pavlopetri shows that those footprints can still be read, if we know where and how to look. As Pavlopetri settles into its place within the broader map of ancient history, its meaning becomes steadier and more grounded. It no longer needs bold claims or dramatic framing. Its importance comes from clarity. Few ancient sites offer such a clean picture of everyday urban life preserved exactly where it was lived. That alone makes Pavlopetri rare, not just among submerged cities, but among archaeological sites of any kind. For researchers, the city continues to answer small but meaningful questions. How wide were streets meant to be? How close did families live to one another? How much space was given to work versus rest? These are details often lost when ruins are damaged, rebuilt, or stripped over time. In Pavlopetri, those relationships remain visible. The city's design reflects choices made by people who understood their environment and planned for long-term living. It also quietly challenges how history is taught. Many timelines focus on large kingdoms and famous centers of power. Smaller coastal cities like Pavlopetri rarely make it into textbooks, even though they were likely far more common. By studying a place like this, historians gain balance. They see how regular communities functioned alongside larger civilizations, supporting trade, movement, and cultural exchange. The city's calm disappearance also adds nuance to how we think about collapse. Not all endings are violent. Some are slow and practical. Pavlopetri's residents likely recognized the signs over time. Flooding became more frequent. Buildings required constant repair. Resources shifted. Leaving may have been a difficult choice but not a desperate one. That kind of decision-making reflects resilience, not failure. In recent years, Pavlopetri has also influenced how the public understands deep-sea mystery stories. It grounds curiosity in evidence. When people hear about sunken structures or unexplained ruins, Pavlopetri serves as a reminder that real discoveries exist, supported by careful research. It encourages interest without exaggeration, wonder without distortion. This balance matters. The ocean will always inspire imagination, but archaeology depends on patience. Pavlopetri was not uncovered all at once. It took decades of observation, improved tools, and cautious interpretation. Its story unfolded slowly, much like the sea that covered it. That process is part of the lesson. Today, Pavlopetri remains where it has always been, just offshore, beneath clear water. Divers can still see its outlines on calm days. Fish move through doorways where people once walked. The city is no longer active, but it is not silent. It continues to inform, to teach, and to quietly reshape our understanding of submerged civilizations. What Pavlopetri ultimately offers is perspective. Human history is not only written on land. It is written along coastlines, across plains now underwater, and in places we once assumed were empty. The sea did not erase these stories. It simply held them. As exploration technology improves and curiosity deepens, Pavlopetri will likely remain a reference point, a standard against which other discoveries are measured. Not because it is the most mysterious, but because it is one of the clearest. It shows what is possible to find and what care and restraint can preserve. In that sense, Pavlopetri does not ask for belief. It asks for attention. And in the quiet space between land and sea, it reminds us that much of our past is still right where we left it, waiting to be understood.